Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Durkin Impact Show. And I am fired up today because we talk about reawakening the warrior spirit. We have any warriors out there? Anyone fired up here on the week of September 11th? Are we looking for any warriors out there? Do I have any men or women who are looking to get a little fired up? Yo, if that's you, you're in the right space and you're in the right place because I have a special episode today from my man Jayson Downing. And I've known Jayson for a long time now, but when you hear about reawakening the warrior spirit and what it's going to take for you to reawaken that spirit, let me tell you what. I know it's football season. I know you've been watching your college games and you're amped up for your pro teams, everything else. But this is real life stuff, and this is going to put a little extra wiggle in the jiggle today. So get ready to rock and roll. And I'm extra fired up today because why? Well, as this drops on 9/11, just yesterday, Sunday afternoon, September 10th, while y'all were watching football, we had our new team of Impact coaches on a call. Yep, and we were getting kicked off with our new 6-month program. So thank you for all your questions and comments on that. I'm pumped up. We got our retreat with them and our mastermind and our Impact Texters coming up next month in October, the 5th to the 7th. So yeah, we've been talking about that because I love live events. Matter of fact, speaking of live, we're doing this podcast live. Yeah, Jason's in-house. I got Julie. Juju, let him hear you right now, Julie. Whoop, whoop. Julie's here. I got Marcus here in the house. Yep. Yeah, Marcus is fired up today. Come on, Marcus, give me some juice. I guess he's not far enough in the show yet, but we're live, and I love doing the podcast live right now. So I hope you're excited as well. We've got a lot of good things coming up. Hey, for all of you who ever drop some comments, emails, DMs, Instagrams, TikTok, I don't even know, everywhere. Julie's always like, hey, Todd, did you see what came through on this? I'm like, no, Julie, what is it? She just handed me an email that came through. An email. Someone went to todddurkin.com, went to the podcast section, and you can email me through that. And I want to give a shout out to Vivify Coaching, okay? Annie Anderson from Georgia. She's Georgia. So check it out. Hi, Todd. And Julie, if you're still working with him, she better be after 19 years. Good job, Annie. I messaged you back in 2020. I'm not sure if I listened to that because I was probably in the doldrums fighting the good fight. After your presentation speech at the Idea Fit virtual conference, I was having a difficult time having lost my grandmother in January of 2020, experiencing closing the gym that I was working at due to COVID and the lack of clients. Julie had passed my note on to you, and you inscribed in my Get Your Mind Right book, Annie. This was the note I wrote her. Annie, wow, what a note you wrote to me. Thank you. Keep the fire burning and use your 2020 setbacks as high octane to fuel your passion and purpose. Keep being that lighthouse to get your mind right. Todd Durkin. And he says, well, I'm happy to report that I was able to keep my eye on the lighthouse, and now, almost exactly 3 years from receiving your words of encouragement, I have opened my very own gym and business called Vivify Fitness and Nutrition. It's now a reality, and you two are many amazing folks I think of as that helped me get here. I hope this note finds its way to you and or Julie again, which I hope it does. Please know I have the greatest gratitude for the both of you. Annie Anderson. Annie, thank you. I'm getting choked up because thinking back to the war we were in 2020 and 21, 22, heck, 2023, right, is perseverance, grit, resilience, the things we talk about. Sometimes you think you're down and out, and you're not. So thank you for the note. For all of you who DM me, for email me, for message me, for text me through our community at 619-304-2216. I read them all of them, and it keeps me alive. It's like oxygen to my soul. So thank you. Keep them coming. And if you have not yet rated and written us a review, can you please do so? Can you give us a 5-star rating, please, and write a review? The reviews help the Todd Durkin Impact Show go through the roof. How we get guys like Jayson Downing on our show and some of our guests we get going on. These ratings and reviews help skyrocket us up the podcast charts. So thank you for that in advance. If you have not yet done that, please do so. And man, I am really, really excited to have Jayson Downing in the house. today. And I'm going to give Jayson his proper due because when you hear his bio, he just came out with his book here September the what? It was Tuesday. Was it the 4th? The 5th?
The 5th.
The 5th?
Yeah.
Guys, Jayson's book just dropped, Reawakening the Warrior Spirit. Now, so you know, this is Jayson's bio. Check it out. Former Marine. So happy that he is here today. Former Marine Corps captain and combat veteran. His military accomplishments include a wide range of experiences from managing an intelligence unit in Afghanistan and assembling, training, and leading a scout sniper platoon overseas. He's completed some of the most challenging military training schools in the world, including the legendary Marine Corps Infantry Officer Course. Since leaving the military, Jayson has acquired 2 graduate degrees, not one but 2, with honors in both business and finance. He was awarded the Dean Scholar Award at UC Irvine, graduated top 12% of his class, and he has multiple academic honorary societies. Jayson's worked as a college professor and a business consultant. He's the founder of thewarriorjournal.com. Remember that, thewarriorjournal.com, a website dedicated to personal development and fostering the next generation of courageous men and women warriors. His book, Reawakening the Warrior Spirit, exploring what it means to be a warrior in the modern West, engages some of the most challenging topics of the day from the unique perspective of the military warrior mindset. Now, Jayson's been married to his lovely bride, Dr. Carly Golightly, right, for 2 years. Dr. Carly also is our team naturopathic doctor here at Fitness Quest 10, where I first met Jayson, and then Jayson was part of the God-Sized Dreams coaching program, where I'm like, Jayson, you need to write a book. Write a book. Write a book. And not only am I excited for him writing the book, but Jayson and Dr. Carly are going to have a new baby boy coming up in just a matter of weeks, maybe days. September 24th is the due date, right?
That's right.
That's the due date. So without further ado, we've got Jayson Downing in the house. Jayson, welcome to the show.
TD, thanks for having me.
I am pumped.
I'm stoked to be here.
I hope you are. I want to first say thank you for your service, 5 years of service in the Marine Corps, man.
Thank you.
That's quite admirable. And I thank you.
It's serendipitous that this is dropping on September 11th. That is one moment that actually changed my entire life. I think that most of us can remember back to where exactly we were on that day when September 11th happened. I don't know about you, but I know exactly where I was, and it completely changed the course of my life.
Where were you?
I was at home, actually. I had just finished my breakfast.
How old were you?
Oh, gosh. September 11th. About 14, 15 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, so early teens.
Okay.
And seeing that, just you felt like the entire world just shifted on its axis a little bit. And I didn't know it at the time, but it would definitely be the catalyst, one of the catalysts that would drive me into wanting to be part of the military at a later date when I was in college. So
it left you an impression like that. Yeah, I think anyone listening in right now, you think about that day, that perilous day that changed our history forever. I was actually right where I'm sitting right now at Fitness Quest 10. I was driving here when I heard the news. I still remember I had it was like a 10-inch TV up in the corner of the roots here. And I remember watching. We didn't train anyone that day, like everyone else probably listening in. We're like, what the heck is going on? But it's not by mistake that we're dropping this here on the week of September 11th because, Jayson, my hat's off to you and to all the men and women who serve our country and have served this country, because I think back the lives that were lost on that day, the thousands of people who I know, having some friends and former teammates and such back from Jersey and New York and throughout. Man, right now, today, this week is a great time to reflect and think back about our freedom, our freedom. And we talk about reawakening the warrior spirit, which we're going to get into a moment. Again, I love talking to men and women of any service branch, but Marines. My brother was a Marine. He was a colonel in the Corps, and you were a captain. My brother was a colonel.
Oh, really?
My brother was a colonel.
Okay.
Yep. So he had a close to a 30-year career. So the Corps is very, very near and dear to my heart. You would have been a colonel or general if you kept going. I know that. But Tell me about your career in the Marines.
You know, whenever anyone brings that up, it's always, the focus is on the service. And there's definitely service, there's definitely sacrifice. But reflecting back right now, and this is kind of what I was doing over the past several years, reflecting back, there's also, I consider it that I was also very lucky.
Yep.
Because I was able to be surrounded by a group of men and women and be mentored and be trained by some of the best people I've ever known in my life. They instilled these life lessons in me, life lessons about service, about speaking the truth, about courage, about living a life full of strength and power, about having fortitude in your life, and all of these lessons that have made me who I am today. And so that's actually, I'm like referencing some of the main chapters in the book right now, because that's what I'm trying to give to other people in this book, is what was so freely given to me. Yep. In training, and then when I was surrounded by the Marines that went to war with me, and then were on subsequent deployments with me, that camaraderie and those lessons, those life lessons. And as I look around, and I was doing this, it's funny, you brought up COVID earlier, and it's like 2020, 2021, feeling like you were in the trenches. That was what inspired me to write the book, is what I saw going on during that time. I was looking around myself, particularly, as a college professor, looking at some of these younger students, these 18, 19, 20-year-olds who were just growing up in no direction, a lot of depression, a lot of hopelessness, a lot of anxiety, a lot of just aimlessness, and no hope for their future. Just be like, there's so much conflicting information going on right now. There's, don't get me started on social media, everything that's going on there. And
I want to dive in a minute, but before we get in the book, I just want to stick to the Marine Corps for a second, because I'm enamored. Sure. Sorry, I know you want to go to the book. I get it. You're excited. Big week here. But what would, you just say you learned a couple lessons. What would be like one or two of the key lessons that you got out of the Corps? Like life lessons. Like what would be some of those things?
One of the first ones that comes up is the idea of fortitude. And I talk about that in the book. But when you think that you're at the end of your rope, you're really only about 60 to 70% of the way there. You can push yourself so much farther, and you're capable of so much more than you even realize. Going into something difficult, if you think this is too much for me.
How do you know that?
Because I've been pushed there. I've been pushed to very close to the breaking point. That's what military training does. Is it breaks you down, pushes you to that breaking point so you can find out where your weaknesses are. And also you realize that breaking point is a lot farther than you actually thought it was. You realize you can do a hell of a lot more than you originally thought yourself capable of. So that was one of the first lessons that I took away from the Corps, is like constantly surprised at how far you can push yourself and how you can transcend those limits that are inside your head, but they're not actually limits for yourself. They just exist in your head.
How do you overcome them?
Well, there's a couple different ways. One of the things that they used to do with us in training is a lesson in perspective. A lesson in perspective. And I talk about this when I talk about the chapter on truth. So in training, you go out on these, what they call FEXs, field exercises. All right. So you learn something in the classroom, then you kind of practice it, and then you go out and you actually train in the field and try to learn this stuff and ingrain them. So these FEXs are anywhere from a week to 2 weeks long. Now, normally, I was in Virginia during this time, and normally there's not much snow in Virginia, but I just happened to be there when, I don't know if you remember, but back in, was it 2010, when D.C. was snowed in and they had to shut down? Yeah, I was there training in Virginia when that happened. I remember walking out
and trying... in Quantico?
It was in Quantico, yeah. So I remember walking out trying to find my truck, and I could not find my truck. The snow was above my truck. So this is what we were training in, all right? And so hypothermia was a very real consideration. I had several of my fellow Marines around me who got frost nip, which, if you don't know, is a precursor to frost bite. And if you don't treat it, it can become very serious. So we were cold, and we were miserable out there. And we were grumbling, and we were complaining. We thought we had reached the end of our ropes. We were at one of those lines where we thought we were at the limit of what we could take. And this is when they decided to tell us the story of the Marines at the Chosin Reservoir, which is a battle in the Korean War. They chose this moment, and it was a pivotal battle in that war that pitted about 30,000 Republic of Korea forces and Marines in the mountains, the northern slopes of Korea, against about 120,000 invading Chinese forces. So it was a ratio of roughly 4 to 1. All right, so they were outgunned, outmanned, outmaneuvered, and enveloped. And this was in the mountains where temperatures got down to minus 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And what they were able to do is one of the most successful tactical withdrawals in military history. They were able to turn around. You don't call it retreating. Marines never retreat. We just rename it. We call it a tactical withdrawal. Or as the commander said at the time, we're attacking in a different direction.
That's good. It's good. Perspective.
Yeah, that's right. So we were told about the Marines, and they complained less, they were up against worse, and they accomplished more. And it was one of the most successful tactical withdrawals. They were able to make it to one of the port cities of Hunan, and were able to evacuate on boats. And when they counted up the casualties, it was exponentially more Chinese forces that were casualties than were Marines. So when you hear that story and you're out safe in the woods of Quantico, you start complaining a little bit less. There's that perspective that you're given, like, okay, yeah, things are bad, but they're not that bad, right?
Yeah. No, I love that perspective. You know, there's that old adage. It says, bleed more in training and die less in war.
That's right.
Right? Bleed more in training and die less in war. And it's often used in the sports field, like, you know, when you're training, bleed more and die less in war. But with all your training that you went through to prepare you for even your deployments, do you feel, was there ever a time in your deployments that you didn't feel prepared? Or do you feel that your training from A to Z had you dialed in for everything that you were about to see?
There's always things that you can't anticipate that come up. But it was about 2 years that I was in training before I was ever allowed to step in front of a platoon. Now, it was a little bit longer for me than it was for others because of the particular specialty that I went into, so that's, you know. Sure. But still, there's a significant amount of time that you go through training before you ever step in front of a platoon as an officer. So, yes, there are things that you don't anticipate, but you always feel that you have such a solid grounding in what you have been taught that your instincts are normally pretty good. Yeah. You know, you can fall back on them. Trust your instincts. That's right.
I'm gonna write that down, taking notes, because I'm enamored with this, because the crossover in, I'll call it real life, all of these lessons you learn in training to go to war, they cross over into the business world, into real life as well. And Jayson, just the last question on I could talk Marine and military all day, but in getting out in the transition, I hear that obviously a lot of, it's a big transition on a lot of levels. What's been the hardest transition, and what's been the best part of transitioning from the Marine Corps into civilian life? The hardest and the best.
That's a good question. It was a lot harder than I originally anticipated.
Why?
Actually.
Why? Camaraderie?
It was camaraderie, but it was also the organization and the piece of my identity that had been the primary source of my identity for so long that had given me mission and purpose in life was just gone. It was just no longer there. I was still a Marine.
That's how you trained.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so now you have to figure out, I had to figure out for myself what the next step was.
Yeah, who you are.
Right. Who am I outside of the Marines?
GSD, right.
Exactly. And I thought that would be a simple question, but then you get into, you know, certain easy answers, like I'll go to school, now I'm a student, and it's so much less fulfilling sometimes unless you have another purpose that you're aiming towards. Yeah. You know, and I came across a story, and when I was writing this book, I came across a story. It's called the Ronin. When I was studying the Japanese samurai warrior class. Have you ever heard of the Ronin? No. The Ronin was, let me back up. Japanese samurai were trained for war from the age of 5. All right? So they were trained in military principles, they were trained in strategy, or they were trained in swordsmanship. They were trained to obey their master. That was their goal in life, to be the servant of whoever the master that they were serving was. A Ronin was a samurai whose master had died. Okay. So this was a person without purpose, without anyone to serve, and with all this training. All right, if you look in how the word Ronin is written in Japanese, it's written with the characters for floating, and man. So a floating man, or a person adrift, lost, purposeless. And consequently, the Ronin were known for getting into squabbles, getting into, turning to thievery, banditry, joining whatever warlord raised the metaphorical battle flag, or they would disengage from society completely. Sometimes at the extreme end, they would even kill themselves. And as I look out at the world and I see all of these veterans transitioning and some of them leading to suicide, I think maybe this impact of like the Ronin mentality is not restricted just to the Japanese samurai. It seems to be something that a lot of military veterans are feeling as they transition out. Like, what is my purpose? I'm floating. I'm lost. I don't know what to do. And that was definitely what I felt when I got out. It's just, I wasn't encumbered with all the cultural limitations and expectations as the Japanese samurai were, but I felt like a shadow of that same lost, adrift spirit.
Yeah. It's almost like the mission. You have a strong mission for 5 years, and
Exactly.
like you know your mission,
Right.
and the mission is to complete the mission, whatever has to get done.
Right.
And then you get out, and you're not handed a mission,
Right.
unless you work for a company that has a strong mission and that you
And you
altruistically
believe it. Right.
exactly, versus you're just told here's the mission and you're
Right.
like you don't really feel it. I bet you that would be a really challenging transition. That's an interesting analogy. You're a deep dude, brother. I knew that. That's why I wanted you on the show. And I know in us working with God-Sized Dreams, it's one of the things that we talked about is getting clarity on your purpose and even in your transition now, right, from the Marine Corps into multiple roles as a college professor and a business consultant. Now add author to that and add father to that as well. Where do you feel you're at in the continuum of finding yourself?
It's a continual process, but
Yeah.
you asked what the best part of getting out is, and I think that this latest transition into becoming a husband and soon to be a father has been part of the greatest part of that. Now I have this new purpose that's showed up in my life, and it's, I'm going to be responsible for somebody, and just I'm continuing to adjust to that and the different expectations and what that means for the future, and extremely excited, also a little bit scared, but
You mean you haven't read the book on how to be a great dad? It's funny, I was just talking to Melanie about this the other day, about when you're anticipating becoming a father or a mother, how great it's going to be, but until that moment happens, when you see that infant, your purpose deepens quick.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's no longer about you or even your spouse. You realize, especially that firstborn, you're like, oh, things just got real. It's like things got real, and that responsibility and that purpose on that. What are you most excited about for being a parent?
I think it's going to be an amazing adventure.
The adventure part.
The adventure part, yeah. I'm excited about, being responsible for a new life and being able to train that to boys and being able to train that young man up into being a man, being able to be a positive agent of change in the world that we live in, as crazy as it is. It kind of scares me. When I look out at the world and I see the world we're living in right now with the outrage and the despair and the polarization and this victimhood mentality that everybody's wandering around with, and turning all their friends into these mini dragons like I talk about in the book, and fighting the mini dragons instead of the big dragons in our life, like, it scares me that my son is going to be walking out into that world. So that's one of the reasons I'm trying to put this book out there. It's like, what can I do to try to better the world we're living in? Because that's going to be the world that he inherits from all of us.
Would you say part of you writing this book, even though he wasn't conceived yet, was for your future son?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Or daughter?
Definitely. Because Carly and I have talked about it. We've known that we want to have kids for a while now. We weren't exactly sure when that was going to be, but yeah, in my mind, it was always at least partially being written for that.
I want to dive into the book a bit, and I also want to know at the end of where is this all going? Like reawakening the warrior spirit, because I hear a guy who served in the Corps, the Marine Corps, who is a true patriot, loves the country. You're a man of faith. You're a dad. You're ticked off with the world of where we're at today, and your purpose, your sense of I got to do something. The next step is the book. You don't know yet maybe where it's going to lead from there, other than I hope that Megan Kelly picks this up. I hope that you're smiling, but we're just setting an intention. I hope that there's people who pick this book up that say, you know what? Jayson Downing is a guy that I want on my podcast. This is your first podcast, is that right? Is this your first one you're doing? Have you done
My second.
Your second one. So good. You got warmed up in practice.
That's right.
And now you're here. You're a seasoned expert here. But the world, this country needs some good, strong leaders. And I'm looking at you, and I've known you now for a long time. I'm like, man, he'd be a good politician. he'd be a good leader. But
I majored in political science.
There you go.
When I was in school, but I got close to the politics, and I was like, no. Which is why I went to the military. But never say never.
So, first off, congratulations on becoming a father here soon.
Thank you.
It could literally, as this episode drops, it could be any day. Even though the due date's the 24th, heck, it might happen on today. You don't know, right? So
on call right now.
On call. You are on call, and if you got to go, you got to go. But Reawakening the Warrior Spirit, and I'm holding the book in my hand. I got a copy, one of the first copies, so thank you for it. Is again, what was the drive really why you wrote the book? What, I mean, you touched on it, but what is your hope with this book?
So let's go back to 2020. We remember we're all locked down, right? And there's just this feeling of disconnection, and everybody, I think, is literally going a little bit crazy. There's just this deranging effect.
Or a lot.
We can't, a lot, right?
I'll raise my hand on that.
All you have to take in any sort of information about the world around you is the news, which is not the greatest source of information to go to, right?
Over and over and over, like on loop. Yes. Just like, get your mind right. I'm like, I'm watching the news. It's not
heaven forbid social media, and then you get drawn
or
into
both.
that. Yeah.
Hours of.
So anyway, that's where
PTSD
I'm at.
right now.
And I can't sleep. I couldn't sleep.
Yep.
And I would just would stay awake, and I'd hear something or something would come up, and I'd just rehearse it.
I couldn't sleep. How long?
For like months.
Like 4 hours a night, 5 hours a night?
It would vary. Sometimes I'd get a decent night's sleep, but it was not uncommon for me to wake up and just be completely tired, dead tired, because my sleep, even when I slept, wasn't good.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The only way I found that I could actually sleep was I would sit down at my desk and just start writing. Everything that was in my head, I would get it out on a piece of paper. And it could be just a paragraph, it could be a page, it could be several pages long. And then once it was out of my head, I didn't have to run through it anymore. I didn't have to keep running through, and I didn't have to remember it. So I could just forget it and go to sleep. And that worked. And I thought that's all it was. And then Carly, now my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, she picked up some of my ramblings, read it, and she said, "This is really good. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" No, that's crazy. No, I could never.
That was all part of the courting process, by the way. Sorry, Carly. This is unbelievable, honey. Yep.
So she was the one that kind of initially planted the seed. Said, "I see this in you," and even if I didn't see it myself.
And she's always been that way with you.
Yeah.
To this day.
Yeah.
Right. She sees a lot in you that sometimes you don't even see in yourself, and she sees it. So I just want to make sure she understands. I know you understand, but she sees so much greatness and good in you. So keep going.
And so I started reading books because I'm like, okay, if I'm going to read a book or write a book, what would I write about? I had no idea. So I started reading some personal development books, and one of them I came across is called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Have you ever read that book?
No.
So it's
You're a deeper dude than I am. I can't read. You're deep. You're good. You're good. King, Warrior, what?
King, Warrior, Magician, Lover.
Okay.
Written by Douglas Gillette and the name Murray. His last name's Murray.
Okay.
Gillette and Murray. And two Union psychologists who wrote this book, and they're talking about the 4 different archetypes that make up the essential male personality, the ideal psyche.
Interesting.
And I was reading through this, and I'm like, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. This is interesting, and I was enjoying it. And then I got to the warrior archetype, and I said, okay, this is something I could write about. This is something I could dig into. This is something I could truly explore and figure out. And so I just started piecing it together, and I didn't commit to writing anything right away. I just said, well, if I was going to write a book, what would it be about? what would the table of contents look like? And then you start jotting things down, and little by little, it just starts to come together. Until eventually, I just made the commitment, and I said, yeah, I'm going to write a book. And at that point...
What was that? Was it Carly? What was it?
It was me finally owning it for myself. She was the one that was constantly encouraging me and saying, I think you can do this, I think you can do this. I wasn't ready to commit. And then eventually I reached a point where I just said, yeah, I need to stop fooling around. I'm going to commit to this. And that's when I went from being just an amateur writer to being a professional writer. And what I mean by that is there's a book that I've read, one of my favorite books, a tiny little book. You can read through it in a day. It's called The Art of War by Stephen Pressfield. It's obviously a play on the art of war. This one's called The War of Art. The War of Art, all right?
The War of Art.
The War of Art. Yeah, The Art of War was written by Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
Yes. So he does a
Great
play on
book.
that, and he does The War of Art.
Interesting.
So this is for anybody who ever wanted to do something artistic or create a new business venture, but felt like they got held back by something he calls resistance. Resistance is self-sabotage, self-denial, everything that we tell ourselves, that loop that we have in our head that tells us that we're not good enough and constantly keeps us from reaching our potential. So according to him, what separates the amateur writer from the professional writer is that the amateur sits around waiting for inspiration. The professional writer sits down and starts writing and knows that inspiration will come to him if he starts and stays consistent.
Mark that tape right there, like that.
So that was the switch for me. And so what that meant for me practically is now I'm making this into as much of a daily routine as I can. So sitting down, and sometimes it was normally in the morning. I do my best work in the morning. So normally I would get my cup of coffee and maybe I'd go sit down and I'd jot out like for 30 minutes, just see what happened in 30 minutes. Sometimes I would hit the gym, I'd get my coffee, go to the gym, and then come back and make sure to spend at least 30 minutes writing. And then I would dive into my work for the day. But that's placing that as a priority. People who think, and I think this is why a lot of people start writing books and don't finish, is they think, one, they're going to wait for inspiration, or two, they think that, well, I'll just get to it when I can, or I'll write when I have time. You never are going to have time.
That's right.
Yeah, you need to steal time away from your schedule and set the boundaries and say, this is when I'm writing. It could be just 20 minutes. It could be 30. It could be an hour. Whatever you have, you need to steal that time away, make it consistent, and that's when you end up writing something.
Yeah. When did Kelly Watson come into play with the writing process and scripter? Was it after you had most of it down?
It was after. I had most of it down. I was going through the editing process.
Editing, yep.
Yeah.
Got it. Because I remember Carly sharing what you were doing and that you were working on that stuff. Interesting.
Kelly was great. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's unbelievable. So keep going. So the book, as you're having basically you're putting all your thoughts and words down on paper. You eventually synergize it. I have some specific questions because while it's just coming out, I had a chance to review it. Chapter 2, you actually talk about the warrior spirit. How would you define the warrior spirit? Chapter 2 says, what is the warrior spirit? What is it?
The warrior spirit is the energy that you have that enables you to confidently, honorably, and courageously confront the challenges and opportunities that you have in your life. So anything that comes your way. So it's not primarily focused, a lot of people think it's primarily focused with physical violence. No, it can be, all right? If the opportunity, or rather the challenge that's in front of you, is a group of armed thugs, then maybe you're going to have to resort to that, right? But that is not what the warrior spirit is. It's the energy that enables you to confront the challenges and opportunities in your life and to do it courageously and honorably in order to push yourself and your family and those around you forward.
So where did it go? Where did it go?
Well, I discussed that in the book. There's a couple. Okay, so more specifically, I talk about.
I hope y'all enjoy this conversation. I'm having a blast.
More specifically, I talk about why it went away.
Okay.
And no particular order. One of them being good times. So there's an old saying that. How is it? Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. We've been going through a period of really good times for a while now in this country. What I mean being that we have more wealth and prosperity than almost any group of individuals, any country, any nation, any civilization before in human history. In fact, I heard one cultural commentator put it this way: we may be the first generation in history where we don't know what we're supposed to do with our lives. Because most of the major problems around us are already solved, if you really think about it. We have new problems and they're big, but like in the past, if you were to sit around at home all day doing nothing, it would end up in starvation and probably death. Now it's rampant obesity and a social media addiction, right? If you sit around doing nothing. So I think that we've just kind of gotten a little fat and happy, and there's not that actual need to get out and do anything. And so people have gotten a little bit lazy. I think that's one of the things that's
Who do
going
you think's
on.
going to benefit most from this book? I know everyone. I know that's the answer you want to say, right? Everyone. But who really is like this book when you were writing, or now that you've written it, like this book is going to speak to who?
If you're lost or confused, if you're particularly angry about what's been going on in the society around us, all the outrage, the division, the polarity, the fact that it seems like our culture is kind of being torn apart at the seams. If you're like me and you look around and you think that, you know, there's a lot of old-fashioned virtues like grit, fortitude, strength, courage, which used to be held up as an ideal, and now they seem to be ignored at best and maybe even toxic at worst in our modern society, how we talk about them, and you're confused about that, this book is for you. It's going to try to explain that. It's going to dig into that. And it's going to also provide a path forward.
What is your hope with the book?
I hope that, so we were talking about this right before we started the podcast. So I think I have two hopes for the book. One is that it provides encouragement and inspiration
Preach.
to people
Preach.
in figuring out how they can better become the warriors that they were born to be in their own lives. So, and it does that by providing what I like to say a code or an ethos for how to live your life. This is just what was given to me. This is what I was trained, and this has worked pretty good for me so far. So this is what Marines are taught and what warriors have been taught throughout the centuries. And so I talk about the service mentality. I talk about speaking truth and living a truthful life. I talk about embracing a life full of strength and power, and facing adversaries with your face forward, which is a chapter on fortitude. Instead of running away, face it head on and deal with it head on, because that's actually how our nervous systems are wired, to face challenges head on as opposed to running away from them. It's a completely different process that goes on in your brain when you turn and you willingly face a challenge as opposed to running away from it. Even if it's the exact same challenge, your body interprets it differently. So that's what I was given, and so that's what I talk about in the book. And so one of my goals is that it's going to encourage people to do that. And the second is that, as I was kind of telling you beforehand, it seems like there's a lot of cultural tripwires, cultural landmines that are in our society nowadays that people don't want to talk about, or they feel like they need to avoid. That's why I put all these lessons in a context of what's going on currently in the modern West. That's why I said exploring what it means to be a warrior in the modern West. There's a lot of things going on which are just, they seem crazy. And people can't understand them. And if you step on an actual landmine in war, you're going to lose your leg. You step on a cultural landmine, you could lose your friends, you could lose your job, you could lose your sanity.
You get canceled.
You get canceled, right? So I want to discuss them, not with any sort of judgment or any sort of prejudice, but with frankness and openness. And with direct honesty, because that is what is required in a liberal democracy if we're going to survive. So I want to be able to maybe detonate a couple of those landmines along the way to give people a path forward, and so that they feel like they can explore these issues.
No, it does. It absolutely does. And I enjoyed going through that, even in chapter 5, Embrace Life with Strength and Power. I always think this, okay, like in that chapter, Embrace Life with Strength and Power, my question is, well, how do you do that when you're getting your tail whooped? How do you embrace life with strength and power? Yeah, here's an ideal. But I'm always thinking, okay, well, what about that guy or gal who right now is in their 40s or 50s or 60s, and they're getting their tail whooped?
Yeah.
would you
First
say
thing
that?
we got to do is we got to destigmatize the idea of power. I quote one of the textbooks in the book that says, oppression and power, two sides of the same coin. So if that's what you think about power, if that's what you are internalized, what you're taught, what you believe, are you ever going to try to pursue power or strength, personal strength and power, if you believe it's merely nothing but a flip side, the upside of the coin of oppression? Probably not. So first thing we got to do is destigmatize it and have a open and honest discussion about it. Be willing to do that. The second thing we got to do, and this is what I say in the book, is that strength and power, that concept is built on the preceding chapters, which is truth and service. And the idea of service talks about what team do you have around you, and do you think of yourself just as an individual, or do you think of yourself as a member of a team? And I go through one of the greatest things about having the service mentality is being able to have that team mentality around you. So if you're getting your tail whooped, like, hey, it's happened to me in the past couple of years. In the past couple of years, definitely happened to me. And who drugged me out of that, who pulled me up out of that, was my friends and my family, who said, I see more in you. I know you have what it takes, and you can keep going.
No doubt.
So I would say, if you feel like you're getting your tail whooped, look to that inner circle you have around you. And maybe you need to change out your inner circle. Maybe you have a toxic inner circle. Maybe you need to get a better inner circle. You know, who are you spending a majority of your time with? Are they lifting you up, or are they pulling you down?
Yeah. I think the 6 truths and the ideals there, no doubt, are missing today, and the book does an amazing job talking about them. But the one thing I want to ask you is, how do you marry, even in the Corps, and I got a lot of great friends who are in the Marine Corps still, how do you marry those ideals that you share, and let me go to the other side, empathy, compassion, love, so you don't get so rigid that you come out wired so tight that you don't have empathy and compassion. How do you think, even with Reawakening the Warrior Spirit, how do you have that warrior spirit that actually is approachable, that is loving, that is empathetic, but is also strong, has conviction, is on behind a mission? What would you say to that?
I would say that a couple things. One, true strength is not found in putting other people down. It's found in lifting them up. And when I go into the chapter on service, I talk about the servant leader mentality. This is what is drilled into you in Marine Corps training. All right? And that, what is the servant leader mentality? It's that when you're the leader, it's not your job to force other people to do their jobs, right? To beat them down or to force them. It's your job to lead by example and to inspire them and to make yourself into the kind of person that they willingly want to lead them and want to follow. And part of that is empathy. Part of that is being able to see your individuals, your Marines, let's say, for the individuals they are. All right. So there's this natural tension that exists when you're a leader in the Marines, and I can speak to this personally, is that you need to prioritize the group mission. That's your job, right? Sometimes at the expense of people's lives in an extreme situation. So the group mission almost always comes first. But in order to accomplish the mission, you need to focus on team morale and build up your team and understand your team. And the only way to do that is to understand that they're not just cogs in a machine. They're not just replaceable parts, right? Each one of them is an individual with individual strengths, individual weaknesses. You know, if you have a Marine who's going through a divorce, right, you need to spend some extra time with that Marine and make sure that they have their head on right. This happened to me right before my second deployment. Marine found out his wife was cheating on him, and I had to be the one to go through and figure out that situation, make sure he was okay, to make sure that everything was settled on that front with the divorce papers, with everything, all this stuff that was going on in his life, so that he could then go on a deployment and be able to serve his country. That's a different leadership. You talk about things you're not prepared for in training, going up against that and realizing, oh, there's a new element to this. This is just about writing a 5-paragraph order and getting people out, you know, to do their job on the battlefield. This is about meeting somebody who's hurting, like, on a personal level and figuring out how to speak to them on that level.
Jason, when you're speaking here, there are actually, besides a lot of moms and dads who listen into this show, there's actually a lot of kids. A lot of kids. When I say kids, late teens, early 20s. They're young men and women. 18 to 22. Is this a book for them? And you know, my heart goes out to a lot of these young men and women who really do have great hearts, but don't know what their mission is yet. They don't know what their purpose is. And the world today can be darn confusing for any of us, right? Can I get a name anyone out there? Anyone out there? Like anyone. I don't care how old you are. But you know, some of them are in college. Some of them didn't go to college, and they're they got a vocation and they're working their tails off, and they're a little lost. Is this something that for them, young men and women, I'll say 18 in their mid 20s, I think is a very pivotal time today on a lot of levels. Is this something that you think will resonate with them?
Absolutely.
Why?
100%. I think that anyone, well, first of all, anyone can learn from these principles. But but I was their age when I started learning these things. And look, when you are in 18, 19, 20 years old, you're figuring out who you are, and you're setting the stage for who you're going to become for the rest of your life, which is why I love being a college professor, because you're speaking directly to that age group. And I remember the massive changes that happened in my life when I was in college and in those early formative years. So what I would tell them, anybody who's listening to this, is that yes, this book will help you. It won't tell you what your purpose is.
Sure.
I can't do that.
Yep.
But if I'm going to use an analogy, if we're going to play a game of bowling, right? They have those rails that you can put up so you don't throw a gutter ball. That's what I'm trying to do here. Put up some rails and say, well, how can you live your life, right? What are the guardrails? Living according to that mentality of service for others, right? Yeah. Understanding who you are as an individual, your individual strengths and weaknesses. You're not just a member of a group, you're an individual, but you also have a team around you and need to serve individuals with your strengths and talents. Yeah. Then living a life according to truth, embracing strength and power, living with fortitude, and being able to face up to the challenges in your life. If you do those things, it's going to help you find your purpose. I might not be able to throw a strike, but I can at least keep you on the board. And what I see us doing right now as a society is we're throwing an awful lot of gutter balls. So what I'm trying to do is put up those rails so that people stop ending up in the gutter. Yeah. Sometimes literally.
Or just grenades.
That's right.
They're just tossing grenades and blowing stuff up, and it doesn't even matter what. Jayson, where can someone get the book?
You can visit thewarriorjournal.com.
Okay.
That's my website, and there's a link on there for which will take you to the landing page for the book. You can also go onto Amazon.
Okay, so Amazon or thewarriorjournal.com. Pick up the book. It just came out Tuesday, September the 5th. Just came out. The world needs more guys like Jayson Downing and men and women who have their warrior spirit awakened, and this book is designed to do that. Jayson, my last question in regards to the book is, Chapter 7, you say something that really piqued my curiosity. Pray for peace, prepare for war. Talk about a dichotomy. I love that. Pray for peace, prepare for war. Yeah. Talk a little bit more about it.
There's a phrase that we have in the Marines, especially when you're training to be a leader of Marines, whether that's a commissioned officer or a non-commissioned officer or an NCO. And the phrase is, don't kill your Marines with kindness. What does that mean? It means if you're out, you're on a training facility, right? It's hot out, it's 100 plus degrees out, you're in 29 palms, everybody's sweaty, everybody's tired, everybody just wants to lay down and relax. The kind thing to do is to let them go and relax, right? Just take the time off, whatever. Don't push them that extra level, right? But if you do that, what happens when they get into war and that extra level is demanded of them? They could be killed. So that's called killing your Marines with kindness. Not pushing them as far as you need to push them in training such that they're unprepared for when they get to war. All right? So just asking the question, do you think our society that we live in right now is killing our youth with kindness? I would say a lot of times, yeah. So why do I say prepare for war? You need to push yourself to your absolute limits. Do something hard. Find something hard and do it. And it doesn't even matter if it's necessarily the right thing that you're doing. You might pivot, you might change course in your life, but if you're doing something difficult and you dedicate yourself to it, two things are going to happen. One, you're actually going to start working towards a goal. Even if it's not the goal even if you end up changing the goal, you're moving forward in your life, and you're changing who you are in the process. So you're moving forward in your life. The worst thing you could do is sit still and do nothing, because all you're going to do is get older. That's it. And so pray for peace. Yes, we certainly hope there's going to be peace in your life, but I can guarantee you at some point it's going to feel like a war. So prepare for that. Do something hard and embrace the challenges in your life with fortitude. Adopt some of the principles in the book and start preparing for that war that will eventually come in your life.
It's good. And pray for peace. Is there a faith component to that?
For me, always yes. I'm a man of faith myself. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that, faith plays a huge part of who I am.
Yeah.
It just does. Now, it doesn't matter as much exactly what you have faith in. I'm not going to tell you in the book who you should believe in or what you should believe in, but have faith in the betterment that you can become, the better version of yourself that you can become, and that there is something bigger than you in the universe.
Yeah. It's interesting when I see that, pray for peace, prepare for war. I love that. It's just, for me, it's just having that faith and being a peaceful warrior, a peaceful servant, right, of being led by God, and that this country get back to being led by God, and that when stuff happens like 9/11, and you gotta prepare for war, you're prepared on all levels, right? When you talk about armored up in body, mind, and soul. I thought it was a very, very powerful chapter, Pray for Peace, Prepare for War, on that. Jayson Downing, thank you. Thank you for writing the book. It's been an honor to see you through this process, through the God-Sized Dreams program, everything you've done with Scripture Publishing, everything you're doing now to grow your brand. And I know it's an exciting month for you, right? You got the book launch, we're doing the podcast, and then most importantly, you become a dad here in just a matter of days or a couple weeks. You become you get your baby son.
I'll keep you posted.
You keep me posted. I know I'm going to hear all about it. How can we, the audience, support you in your mission now to help people reawaken the warrior spirit?
Yeah, so, my Instagram, Jayson M. Downing.
Yep.
Come, join me, talk to me. I'd love feedback about the book. You can join my newsletter, my mailing list on thewarriorjournal.com. And you can buy the book, of course. And if you have read the book, I would love to hear a review on Amazon, or just shoot me an email anyway. Yeah. And those reviews on Amazon, they really help to grow the brand, grow the book, and make sure that it gets out in front of more people. Yeah.
No, it's incredible, and I think when you buy the book, maybe buy a few different books so you can gift them away to your kids or your teammates and colleagues, because you talk about iron sharpens iron. You talk about who you're around, and that's one of your pillars there when it talks about truth and being around the right people. Pick up a few versions and gift them this month. I think you'll really enjoy what's inside of Jayson's book. One of the things I've been coaching Jayson on, and I know it's like one step at a time. My hope is that his movement of reawakening the warrior spirit grows, and that as you disciple more young men and women to really awaken the spirit within, that you're going to certainly be mentoring and coaching a lot more folks who want to reawaken that spirit with these pillars that you shared eloquently both in the book and on today's podcast. So I know you're not there yet, but guys, I'm telling you, in 2024, be on the lookout. Read the book first. Do you have any plans audio-wise? Will the book eventually be read audio-wise, or are you just going to do the written book?
I need to look at. I want to do an audio version, but
Yep.
I'm in the process of trying to figure out what exactly that's going to look like.
Okay, I can help you with all that.
Okay.
All of it. Because what I find now is if you don't like to read anyway. But for those who don't like to read and like to listen, like I like to listen to podcasts like this, or listen to books on tape because you're in the car, things like that, is I've got some resources for you to eventually hear. Let's get the book out. Let's get it in your hands, your listeners that are listening in today. But hopefully we can get it onto audio as well, Reawakening the Warrior Spirit, so you can listen to Jayson's conviction. You can hear his voice, how passionate he is about this topic. So, Jayson, anything else I should have asked you that I didn't ask you, or that you'd like to end with today?
No, just thank you for having me, TD. This has been really special. was telling you before, now Carly and I have both been on your podcast. It's just something special.
That's right.
I remember when she first started telling me about coming to Fitness Quest 10, because she was, she knew her community here, and we had just started dating, and she was very hesitant to bring me in because this is her special place.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's just another gym, whatever. And then I came here and I felt the energy in the room, and I got to know you. I got to know Jeff and Teddy and everybody, part of the team. I got to know Julie, and it's just like, this place is special. And I've been in gyms all over the world, but this place is really special. So just been looking forward to this podcast, and I've been looking forward to just playing a larger role in what you're doing here for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And just so you know, that was all part of the interview process that she had going on for you. She said, hey, I got a guy coming in. Can you put him through the interview process? No problem, Carly. We got this. So, Jason, again, congratulations, and thank you for your service. I know you're never you're always a former Marine. You're you're not an ex-Marine. You're a former Marine. And thank you for your service. And for all the men and women out there this week as the podcast drops, I want to say thank you. If you're serving this great country of ours now, thank you. If you have ever served in any branch of the military, thank you. And it doesn't have to be Veterans Day to celebrate that. We'll celebrate it this week all day long. And Jayson Downing, we're celebrating this week with you so that you can go help hundreds and thousands of people reawaken the warrior spirit. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you.
Awesome. Guys, until next time, I want you to do one thing. I want you to, number one, reawaken the warrior spirit, but you also got to do this. Train hard, eat right, live inspired, create impact, and don't forget, reawaken the warrior spirit.